Alright, hello once again, this is Jeff Scott. Welcome to Chapter 2 from Xerox HTML and CSS3 3rd edition. I had to stop for a little while, and while I did, I dropped the connection to the virtual desktop. So let's see if I can establish it again, and we'll pick back up from where we were. Again, I'm on Chapter 2, so I'm on page 45. And in this chapter, as you can see if you look on the screen right now, the subject of the chapter is how to validate, how to code, test, and validate a web page. Alright, seems like whenever I start this up in slide mode that I have to get off of it anyway, but we'll see. So we can use a text editor to create and edit HTML and CSS files, test an HTML document stored on a computer or server by loading it into the browser, validate an HTML document using a website like W3C markup validation or the Aptana validation feature. I'm going to use the W3C. Describe the use of the head and body elements in an HTML document. Describe opening tags, closing tags, and empty tags. Describe the use of attributes within HTML tags. Describe the use of comments and whitespace. Describe the components Describe the components of a CSS rule set. Describe the use of CSS type, ID, and class selectors. Explain how and why you would start a new HTML or CSS file from a template. Describe 3 ways to run a web page and 1 way to retest a page after you've changed the source for the page. Describe 2 benefits of validating files. So what you see in front of you right here is the typical structure of an HTML5 document. So keeping it simple, in fact, let's just use that one that we did here, and we'll rip out the guts, so to speak. So what you see on your screen here is basically, again, the setup for a typical HTML5 document. Let's break it down a little bit. So let's put a little space in here and a little space here. All right. So at the top of the screen, again, you've got your doc type tag, which tells you the type of HTML document you're working with. The decision was made starting with HTML5 to make the doc type simpler. In the past, you had to put a bunch of stuff in there, and between that and the HTML tag, you had to say whether it was strict, meaning that you could only use the HTML tags that had not been deprecated, transitional, meaning you could use those tags, and frame set, meaning that it was like strict except you could use frame set related tags. All right. Your HTML tag, this starts the document basically. This is letting the system know the type of document it is. This is starting the document. This is ending the document. This is an example of an attribute, the lang attribute for language. This is an example of a value for an attribute. Remember, and hopefully you remember, everything that goes in this head section, all of this stuff does not appear on web page itself. And I'm going to save this. Let's create a new folder. We'll call it Chapter 2. Oops. And we'll call this, as you'd probably guess, as we almost always will, index.html. All right. So in the body section, that's where we do the stuff that's in there does appear on the web page. Now you'll notice that if I start a line in here with a less than sign followed by an exclamation point and 2 minus signs, that line becomes a comment line, and I can run that over as many lines as I want. So I can do that, and all of the stuff that's in here will all be comments. Alright? You write comments to provide internal documentation. You provide internal documentation for 2 reasons. One is for you, so if you go back and you look at your code at a later time, you might know why you did what you did. And the other is for maintenance reasons. So if you've got someone who takes over your code, that they have an idea why you did what you did. I've mentioned this before possibly, but I had years ago I had a co-worker, her name was Kathy Grubbs, and she ended up taking over a bunch of my code at AT&T. This was before I left, but I went to a different division. And quite often she'd call me and she'd say, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Even though there were some comments in there, she didn't understand why I did certain things. It got so bad, and I'm not making this up, that about 3 years after I quit there, and I left Woodward Governor, and I was back, I must have been a Blackhawk then. She said, hi Jeff, this is Kathy Grubbs. And I said, hi. She said, you remember that RT8 code you used to work on? And I said, nope, and I hung up the phone because I didn't remember it. So bottom line is, you should always, when in doubt, comment. That's my litmus test. If you have to ask whether or not you should be commenting something, you probably should be commenting it. Alright, so here's their sample document. I could have just grabbed all that stuff and put it in there also, so let me start even a new page in here, and it'll be the old infamous index2 page, index2.html page. Alright, so what's different? Well, we put some comments in here, not comments, I'm sorry, some content. We put a meta tag in there that says this is the character set we're using. That's a natural thing to put in there. I think that stands for Universal Transformation Format 8. It means we're using an 8-bit character code, which is the norm. This is the title that will appear in the tab that we have for it. So it'll say San Joaquin Valley Town Hall. We'll have an H1 tag. You know what those look like from earlier. Alright. And it'll say San Joaquin Valley Town Hall. We'll have 2 paragraphs. One that says, welcome to San Joaquin Valley Town Hall. And the next one that says, we have some amazing speakers in store for you this season. Then we have a third one. Alright, that's going to say speaker information. Now, I don't have that file, so when I click on that, I'm actually going to get an error message. If you watch when I run this. So there it is. If you look down at the bottom of the screen here, you may or may not be able to see where I've got my mouse going back and forth. But when I go and put my mouse over the hyperlink, it shows where it's going to try to go to. Since there is no page, it says your file was not found. Now there's no HTML, there is no CSS in this document. It's just straight HTML. Okay, so this isn't blue like it was on the last one because that had some CSS in it. Although you can code HTML using lowercase, uppercase, or mixed, I agree with this. Use lowercase. It's just the recommended way of doing things. Alright, so these 2 elements, this is all taken from the web page. There is an opening H1 tag and a closing H1 tag, an opening P tag and a closing P tag. Alright, the reason I'm telling you that is if you look at the closing tag, it looks exactly like the opening tag, except after the less than sign, you see a /. That's the common way to close a tag. Some tags don't require closing tags, such as the BR tag, which stands for line break, and the image tag. Alright, now I do want to mention something to you, just so you know this. This is how so if I wanted to put, let's say, after the H1 tag. Let's say I wanted to put a couple line breaks in there. Okay? What I just showed you will work fine. Let's see how it changes. When I refresh, we should have more space right here. And you see we do. All right? But what I want you to understand, I'm going to remove those, and I'm going to put them back in again. You can still write a, oops, that's wrong. You can, if you want to, you can still write line break tags the old-fashioned way, like this. And that's basically referred to as a self-closing tag. That'll still work. You'll notice if I put that in there, all right, and I refresh, whoops, what did I do? I think it's because I put those on the same line as the body, but I'm not sure. In fact, let's put 2 more in here. And we'll put one that doesn't have a thing on the end. So if you look at these, when I run this, if it runs correctly, let's see if it comes back. No, I lost my heading. It gave me the extra space in there, but I've lost the heading. Oh, because I took out the H1 tag. There. So, the heading will be back, and now I'm going to put in 2 regular line break tags. This is the old-fashioned way of doing it. You still can do it that way. All right? So it's back, and you see the line breaks. All right? But the recommended way of doing it today is, again, it's not that it saves you a whole lot, but that's the HTML5 way of doing it. Okay? So if I set it down so there's just 1 extra line break tag there, and I refresh, you see how how it's been changed. All right. Then they talk about the nesting of tags and a correct way of doing this and an incorrect way of doing this. The idea is, this is your opening tag, so at the end that should go there. Then inside of here you've got another tag. So you should nest like this and not like this. All right? What's the difference? There's a difference, and you'll see it a little bit later when we actually try to validate one of these. The system supposes that if you've got any inner tags, and so these I tags, which stands for italicize, is inside of the P tags for paragraph. So the thought is that the beginning and the ending I tags should be before the ending P tag. So this is considered to be a wrong way of doing it. It may still work, but it's not correct. Here's an example of an opening tag with a single attribute. Here's an example of an opening tag with multiple attributes. So this one has a single attribute. The attribute is href. The value of the attribute is contact.html. Here we have href and HTML2, but we have a second attribute which is title with a value of click to contact us. And we have a third one which is a class attribute with a value of navlink. Not only can tags that have opening and close have attributes, but empty tags can have attributes as well. So this is the image tag, the source attribute with a value of logo.gif, the alt attribute with a value of Muroc logo. Okay? All right. They show here, and this is taken from the book. I don't want to fall too far behind in the book here. But they show here how you can work with a Boolean attribute. Just so you know, a Boolean attribute is a true-false attribute. So if you've got a checkbox like this, in fact, let's just grab this and we'll put it in our code. That'd probably be the easiest way of doing it. So I'm going to grab this, and you're going to see exactly what's going to happen with it. Kind of a silly, contrived example, but it's fine anyway. All right. right, this is going to put a checkbox into our document. The text on it is it's going to say type equals name equal mail list. How about join our mail list? I think I'll need it in there because otherwise there wouldn't be any. So there it is, join our mail list. And you see that it's checked, and that check that you see, that checkbox, is because of this. If I take off where it says checked, that's like saying I don't want it checked. So notice when I refresh, it goes away. All right, I'm on page 49 if you're following along in the text. Attributes for identifying HTML elements. Well, you're going to learn shortly what a div is. It means division. That division has got an ID of page or a name of page. All right, and here I've got a class, and the class is navlink. Okay. So they give you some rules here that you're supposed to be using for this, and much of what you see here, at least hopefully, is going to just be common sense. An attribute has the attribute name, an equal sign, and the value of the attribute. You really should put the value of the attribute in either single or double quotes. Most people use double quotes. Even though you don't have to enclose it in quotes, it's still a good idea. You can't mix it, so you can't open it with a double quote and close it with a single quote. But you use two of one, two of the other, or neither. But again, most of the time what you'll see is the attributes are enclosed. The attribute values are going to be enclosed inside of double quotes. Boolean attributes, well, you saw this a second ago. You used to have to literally say checked equals checked. But with HTML5, you don't have to say that anymore. Okay. Again, notice their coding recommendation on the bottom. For consistency, enclose all attribute values in double quotes. Good idea. All right. Comments I already mentioned, so this is the beginning comment character right there. That's the ending comment character. You can go nuts with working with comments, but sometimes what you want to do is something like this. You want to uncomment or comment out a section of code because maybe you want to move it, or maybe you want to see what it looks like not being there, or whatever. All right. Again, I like this. One of the reasons that I chose this book is I think that these authors get it. Notice, use white space to indent lines of code and make them easier to read, but don't overdo your use of white space. It adds, not even so much because it adds to the size of the file. Of course, that's one thing. But the other thing is it sometimes can make it harder when you have too much white space in it. All right, let's take a look at this example right here. In fact, I'm going to grab this example, and I'm going to put here, or I'm going to copy it. Let's put it that way because it's got other stuff in it. So I'm going to say H1, and I'm not going to use navy. I'm going to use color red. All right. Copy that. Don't need it anymore. And what I'm going to do is, in this example that we were just looking at here, where I added join our mail list, okay, I'm going to add a brand new file, and I'm going to put that in there. I was going to say I lost control of my cursor. It was there. So I'm going to paste that in. What this says is any H1 tag should have a font color of red. Now I'm going to show you a few different ways of doing this same thing. I'm going to save this as let's call this index. Nah, I don't want to call it index 2. I think it's something with a San Joaquin Town Hall, so I'm going to call it townhall.css. Okay, so there's my file. Coloring in it changed, and now what I have to do is if I want to use that in here, that CSS file, I've got to add it. So I have to say link, which means I want to link to the file. What kind of file? The relationship equals style sheet, so it's a style sheet. The href, or where is it? It's at townhall.css. Alright, so how does this change? Okay, watch what happens on here. Watch what happens to the San Joaquin Valley. It turned red. Not like that's a big thing, but I want to show you this, and I want to show you a couple of ways that we can do this. Alright, first way is the way I just showed you. Another way we can do this is we can use what are called hex codes, which starts with a pound sign, and then how much red do I want? I want this to be totally red, so I say FF. How much green do you want? None. How much blue do you want? None. Alright, so why am I doing this? Because I want to show you that when I refresh, this won't look any different. See that? Let's say that I wanted that to be green. Then I'd say I want no red, I want total green, and I want no blue. And you'll notice when I take this and refresh again, now it's green. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is I'm going to type in here hex color code, okay? And I can go over here to color-x.com, and it shows me some of the different color codes that I can use. Okay, so for instance, if you look at this one, change the color to what they show here. Alright, and you can use capital letters or lowercase, but FF means total red, 00 means no green, 7F means most blue. FF would be total blue. But notice how the color changes. Whoops. How the color will change when I click this. Okay? Again, just a couple of examples. And, excuse me, there's other ways that I can do this also. I don't know if this will work or not, but I think it will. RGB 25500, which means I want to use the red, green, blue function on this. I want it to be 255, which is total red, no green, and no blue. Let's see if that changes this back to red. Notice it's not red. Now it is. Alright? Now what I'm showing you too, what you're learning from the start is a good thing. And that is I'm taking the CSS, I'm putting it into its own external file, and then I'm adding it, or linking to it. What if I didn't want to do that? You'll notice that if I comment this out, you now know how to comment out things, that if I comment this out, and I go back and rerun the page, it's black again, which you hopefully would expect. But another way that I can bring this in is I can use what's called a style tag. So there's the beginning style tag, there's the ending style tag, and between them I can say H1, and I can use any of those ones I used before, but I'm going to use color red. Alright, and watch what happens when I refresh. It's red again. This is internal CSS. This is external because it's in another file. It's always recommended that you use external versus internal, but a lot of people still use this. So I'm going to comment this out. And I'm going to uncomment this. Okay? Just so you can see some of the differences. Again, there's so much to teach you. There's just a lot of stuff in here, so you know that. Probably have already figured that out. So, when we look at this, this is called a CSS rule set, and there's different ways you can set up rules. What this one is saying is we're using an H1 tag. That's called our selector. what we want to change is color. Color right there means foreground color, which means the color of the text. We don't want to say background color there, and I'll show you why in just a second. All right? And we want the value of that to be navy. We end it with a semicolon. Now notice what happens when we do this, and you just saw this in the file here. I'm going to go back and change it to the way they did it before. So I'm just going to say color red. All right. But what I'm going to add to this, and I can either say background, and I can give it a color, green, or if I want to, I can say background color. Now that's the old-fashioned way because there's more work involved, because there's more characters. So when I do this, let's see if it turns the background just of the H1 tag to green. And you can see that it does. All right? Might not look that nice together, but you're getting the idea as far as what I'm trying to show you here. So here's the CSS document. Notice the comment structure is different. Whereas in the HTML, we used a comment with a less than sign, an exclamation point, 2 minuses, and then we put in all of our comments and ended it with 2 minuses and a greater than sign. You start comments in CSS with a /* and you end them with a */. Okay? All right. In fact, let's grab everything that they have in here. Unfortunately, it won't let me grab it unless I double click on it, and I hate doing that. But just to show you, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this next CSS page. So I'm going to get rid of all this and replace it with that. All right. I like to put the curlies on their own line, and I like to have a space between each of my selectors. Not everybody agrees with that. Now my background should change, so it's orange, and the color of the heading here will change. So let's check that out. Notice the whole background is a shade of orange, and the heading color changed too. Now there's other things in there, and you might say, well, what about that stuff? Well, we don't have an H2 heading. All right, so let's put in an H2 heading and see what happens. And we'll be very literal here in that we will type in, there we go, come on. This keeps locking up on me. How about right under our H1 tag, we'll put in an H2 tag, and this will say, this is an H2 tag. Do you like it? Let me get rid of that BR tag that we had in there before. So there you go. So you go, nothing changed. Whoops, what happened? There's our H2 tag. So the color is different and there's an underline with it. How did we get that? Well, we told it here that for an H2 tag we wanted it to be italicized and we wanted it to have a border on its bottom that was 3 pixels thick, a solid border that was this color. And you say, well, what about this stuff? UL. UL is an unordered list, and that might not make any sense to you, but I'm going to show you one right now anyway. So let's save this, go back to here, and we'll put in an unordered list at the bottom. I'm going to put in a paragraph first. Members of my family. Okay, so now I'm going to start with an unordered list. And there's 5, including me. No, it's not me 5 times. I'm going to change that in just a second. All right, there's Jeff. There is Sandy, wife. There is Taylor, my oldest daughter. There is Mackenzie, my middle daughter. And there is Chloe, my youngest daughter. All right. So what we just told the system is when you have that unordered list, instead of putting dots off to the sides of it, which are called bullets, make them squares. And if you go, I don't get it, let's take a look. See, it's hard to tell, but they're squares. If I change that to, for example, disk, watch how it changes. They're now circles. Okay? So, there are a lot of different things that I can do with this. You saw with very little CSS how I can make big changes on the page. Again, we're going to have entire chapters on this later on in the text. All right. We are all the way up to page 57. HTML elements that can be selected by a type, ID, or class. Okay? Now, I think the easiest way to show you this will be not to use their example, but to come in here with my own example. All right? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a brand new class. And let me just hit enter a few times because I want to add some white space in here and I want to go back up to here. All right, so I'm going to create what's called a CSS class. A class, when I create it in the CSS file, must start with a period. Okay, so I'm going to call this large bolded text. That's my name. And I'm going to say font size 2 M's. So I'm saying make it double basically the size it would normally be. All right. Font weight, bold. And then let's say font style, I believe it is, italic. All right. So I'm going to call it large, bolded, italicized text. It's a really long name, but you get the idea. It's very descriptive of what's going on in here. All right. So now I'm going to go and add you see my document here. I'm going to go back in, and in my document, I'm going to remove that members of my family for right now. I shouldn't say that. I'm going to comment it out. And instead, I'm going to add a new paragraph right here. All right? And for that paragraph, I'm going to say that the class of that paragraph is equal to, all right, and large, bolded, italicized text. All right? What do you think of my large, bolded, italicized paragraph? I personally, I like it. All right. Again, we have to refresh our browser, and it doesn't look like it worked. What do you think of my large, bolded, italicized paragraph? Personally, I like it. It doesn't look the way I thought it would look. So, class equals large, bolded, italicized text. That's correct. Let's check our class up in here. Bolded, italicized text. I'm wondering if this is wrong here, that font style. Let's just remove that and see if it works then. Large, bold, italicized text. It's got a period, which is what you're supposed to have for a class. All right, I wonder too if I saved the CSS file. So there you go. I don't think I saved it before. Let's go back and let's add this back in. And now let's see if it's italicized. And you notice that it is. All right, so why am I showing you this? Well, when we looked earlier, we were saying we want every single H1 tag to look like this. Well, what if we want H1 tags to look like that and paragraphs and something else? Well, I can create a class which I can use a class on a page as many times as I want. All right? And so I could create another paragraph up at the top where I could use this same thing. So let's go back to our top paragraph that we have in here that says, welcome to Town Hall. And we'll add class equal, and we'll put that in there. And refresh our browser and see if that changes this paragraph right here. And you see that it does. Sometimes you only want to change one thing on a page, and you want to make sure it's just for one thing on a page. So I could come down here and I could put in what's called a footer tag. You're going to learn about all these tags. All right. And I'm going to put up here ampersand copy 2016 Jeffrey Paul Scott Inc. Okay? So, what did that do? Well, let's look. Look at the bottom down here. All right, I've got this with a copyright symbol, 2016 Jeffrey Paul Scott Inc. Okay, and that's fine. But what if I want an ID and I want to call it footer? Well, I can't start an ID. In IDs, you can have only one of them per page. Classes, I can have as many of these on page as I want. IDs, I can have only one. All right, so I'm going to call this ID. It has to start with a pound sign. I'm just going to call it footer look. Kind of a dumb name, but you'll see why hopefully in a minute. I'm going to say text align center, color, let's just use the word yellow, that should work. Font size, small. Try small caps. All right. So now we have to make sure that for that footer we say ID equals footer look. Okay. So I've got to come in here, and where I have my footer tag, I want to change that and add to it ID equals footer look. All right. Now you see what it looks like right now. Let's refresh. Hard to tell because I made it yellow on that background. All right, but it's now centered, and the writing doesn't really look like it got any smaller. And was it in gaps? No. So it didn't like either one of those. So let's go back and fix those. So text align center, that worked. Color, let's just set it to green. Let's do that first. Yeah, the font size shouldn't be small caps. I think that might be, I'm not sure what that is, but we'll fix that in just a second. All right. How about font size? I'm not small caps. Let's just make it small. All right, now this is green. Okay. And let's refresh. See what it looks like now. It's pretty ugly. All right, now 2016, it is small. See the difference? Look at that versus this. Okay, it's smaller and it's centered and it's green. So I showed you an ID, I've shown you classes, and I've shown you how to set individual objects like H1 tags or whatever. There's much, much more to this than what's been shown so far. In fact, I've got a couple presentations, some PowerPoint presentations that I made that go over this stuff in more depth, and I'll try to remember to put those out there. All right, so in the book here on slide 15, the author is showing some examples. I showed you my own. All right. Again, you see IDs must start with a pound sign. Classes must start with a period. So the type means everything in the body, all H1 tags. This means any HTML element that has an ID of copyright. This means any HTML element that has a class of base underscore color. All right? All right. Now next, the author goes over some work with Aptana. I'm skipping this because I'm not using Aptana. Feel free to take a look at it. Feel free. I'll try to remember to talk to the lab assistant and have him look at this so he knows Aptana. I've looked at it. I've used it a little bit, but I haven't done much with it. But I'm just going to skip all that stuff. All right. Common coding errors. So I'm jumping up all the way. This is actually still Aptana, but it's all the way to page 69. But these are errors that we all make. You open a tag and don't close it. You misspell the name of a tag. You misspell the name of an attribute. You put a beginning double or single quote in, but not an ending one. You reference an incorrect file. Everyone makes mistakes. All right, just so you know, it just happens. We all do it. All right, more Aptana stuff in here. Some common coding errors again. Braces. So you have a beginning curly brace. Remember a curly brace. If you don't remember it, curly brace looks like this. There's a beginning curly brace, there's an ending curly brace. So you have a beginning and not an end, or too many left braces and too few right braces, or vice versa. You forget a semicolon, you misspell something. We all do this stuff. All right, the show preview and the run buttons, again, more Aptana stuff. All right. Let's jump all the way up to the slide right here. 3 ways to run a web page that's on the internet or on your computer. All right, don't worry about the Aptana way, but let's just look at it. Let's say that I wanted to go to the Blackhawk Technical College. All right, I wanted to go to the Blackhawk Technical College website. So I could come here, all right, and I could type in blackhawk.edu. There's one way. Boom, I'm there. All right, what you're going to learn in a future chapter, but I'll show it to you now, is I can come in here and I can use what's called an anchor tag. So let's say that I created this, but let's say it was property of Blackhawk Technical College. All right, so I could do all this and I could say this. I could come in here and say A for anchor, href. We did that before with our CSS file, but here we're going to say equals http://www.blackhawk.edu and end our A tag. Now what is that going to do? Well, and actually go right into the A tag, that was wrong. End it there. Alright, now take a look at how the footer changed. Okay, so let's go back. Notice how our footer now is underlined, and when I click it, what happens? It goes to Blackhawk's site. Right. What if I didn't want it to go to Blackhawk's site? What if I wanted it to open up a brand new window? Notice I have 3 windows open, but I wanted it to open up a new window here with Blackhawk in it. Then, instead of doing it like this, I could say target equals underscore blank, which means open this, but open up Blackhawk Technical College in a blank window. Okay, say you don't believe me. That would be good. So notice three open, click, there's a 4th. So I'm still got this open, But now I open that up in a new link. This is all stuff that we're going to be going over as we go through this. So if you feel overwhelmed, to be honest with you, maybe you should. I don't know. So there's a lot of ways that you can open and run things. Okay? All right. How to test a web page and how to debug a web page. All right. Notice this is the home page for the W3C validator. So what I can do, and I'm already there. Notice how I've got HTML validator right there, and I can click. So all I did was type in HTML validator, and it's https://validator.w3.org. If I click on it, it looks like this. So there's two ways typically that I can do this. I can tell it to upload my file. So I click right there, and I click choose file, and I'll go to I have to find it on my desktop in Chapter 2, and it's Index 2. All right, so there it is, and I can click check. If it comes back and it says no errors or warnings, that's a good thing. It didn't find anything that it thought was incorrect. If I don't want to do it that way, the other way that I can do it is I can click validate by direct input, go back to my file, grab everything that's in my file, copy it to the clipboard, and literally just paste it in there, and then check. And you notice, there it is, but it's telling me no errors or warnings to show. Well, what if I had errors? So let's introduce some errors. All right. So I'm going to go back to my document, and I'm going to, this was an H1 tag, but I'm going to put here H4. I'm purposely putting in errors. So that's wrong because you can't match an H1 with an H4. There's a P tag, but I'm going to remove the ending P tag that's right there. So I did that. And where it's got type equal checkbox, I'm going to make that check borks. Again, I'm trying to put some errors in here purposely. For the footer, I'm going to say, instead of footer look, footer looks. So I purposely put a bunch of errors in there. I did this on purpose. So I can come back to this, go back to my direct input here, remove everything that was in it, put in my new stuff, and now check it. And now notice that when I come down to check it, it's showing me that I've got errors. It says there's an H4 tag, but ending H4 tag, but there was no beginning H4 tag. Here it's telling me that check borks doesn't make any sense. All right, so let's check and let's fix just those two errors. So where I had check borks and I changed it, I'll check back to checkbox. And where I had that H1, there's the H1 again. All right, but I still have a P tag here that doesn't have a matching ending tag. All right, so let's see if it catches that. I don't know if it will or not. Again, the validators are meant to catch errors for you, but there's still nothing that's as good as looking at it yourself. No, it said no errors. So it did not even find the fact that I didn't have an ending P tag there. That's a little scary. But if I put it back in fact, let's put it in incorrectly. I'll put .p instead of \p. So I'm purposely, again, introducing an error. These are things you're going to do. Why? Because everyone does. So I'm going to come back to this again. Put it back, check, and let's see if it found that error. Yeah, it says bad character. All right. So it says you probably didn't want to do that. Sometimes you're going to get a very good error listing and you'll know exactly what was wrong. Other times you won't. And you'll have to do some investigatory work on your own. That's, look at that as an opportunity, please. Because that's a good thing. So I'm going to check. I think I've fixed everything now. And now there's no errors. All right. Not only can I do this, just so you know, and I think it shows it here, but not only can I do this for my HTML, and there it is, but there's also a validator, so you've seen all that. There's also a validator for my CSS. So if I go now and go to my CSS file, and now I've got to go not to this validator, but here it's actually called, for some reason, it's called jigsaw.w3.org, but it works the same way. So I'm going to click that direct input. I'm going to paste in my CSS file. See, it's not there. It's all the way up here. All right, and I'm going to check it. It's green. Green means good. If I come back in again, let's leave off a semicolon here. Let's spell disk wrong. We'll put disks. Let's put a color code in here that's incorrect. All right. Let's leave off this pound sign. So again, I'm purposely introducing errors so you can see what goes on in here. All right, and this time, let's not do it this way, just like we did with the other one. All right, we'll remove that, and we'll go by File Upload, and we'll choose a file. All right, so we'll choose townhall.css and check. Notice it's red. It's found at least 3 errors. H1, that value is wrong because it doesn't have the pound sign. All right, it says here we've only got 5 numbers, basically. You need 6. All right. Here it says font size, attempt to add a semicolon before the property name, add it. So it's trying to show you what those errors were. So if I go back here again, and what did we do? We needed a pound sign here. I think I needed another 0 here. I believe that's what it was. And that semicolon right here. Now I might have other things. Let me get rid of these blank lines. That's what's making it look so bad in the screen too. So I'm going to go back again, and again I'll go back, and I can either choose my file again, like that, check, it's all everything's fine again, or again, remember, I can go back and I can do it by direct file input. I can paste it in and click check. You do whichever one is more comfortable for you. There really is absolutely no difference between using those two. All right, so we've made it through the second chapter. In this chapter, we created our own CSS and HTML files and edited them. Again, the book showed much on how to do this in Aptana, which I'm not going to do. All right, too many editors and IDEs on my brain. I just don't feel like doing that, but feel free to use that if you're so inclined. When we come back, the next chapter is basically all on HTML and how to use it to structure a web page. All right, in particular, one of the things we're going to talk about in here is some of the new HTML5 tags. So I'll be back with that in that lecture shortly.